Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating idea from our source material, what it truly means to be a true enlightened master. And, how you can actually tell the real deal from, well, all the other noise out there. This really is the central question, isn't it? Whether we're talking about spirituality or business or just life in general, we're all kind of searching for authentic wisdom, for someone who actually knows what they're talking about. Our source material tackles this head-on, giving us a framework, really, for navigating this big, universal search.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about that universal search for a guide. Then, we'll get into defining what our source calls the Min Su. After that, we'll pit the true master against the false master. That's going to be interesting. We'll give you a guide for telling them apart, look at some major examples, and finally, talk about the ultimate goal of it all, liberation.
So let's start at the beginning. According to our source material, if you're serious about seeking liberation, real freedom from the whole cycle of life and suffering, then finding an authentic guide isn't just a nice to have. It's presented as the absolute critical first step.
So, if a guide is that critical, what kind of guide are we looking for? Well, the source has a specific term for this, the Min Su. And that basically translates to a true enlightened master. But this isn't just a fancy title. It describes a very particular kind of person, someone who has already walked the entire path. They know it inside and out, they know where all the dangers are, and crucially, they know how to get you through them safely.
Okay, so let's really dig into what defines this Min Su. And it's probably not what you'd first think. It has nothing to do with fame or charisma or how many followers someone has. Nope. According to our source, it's all about fulfilling a very specific role and the responsibilities that come with it.
And here we have the absolute heart of their function. A true master isn't just there to offer a bit of inspiration, they are there to provide the complete, unedited roadmap. The text is very clear on this. Giving you only part of the method is considered deeply irresponsible. They have to point out every single danger and provide every single solution because their one and only goal is the complete and lasting liberation of their students.
All right, now we get to what's probably the most provocative part of this material. The source draws a really sharp line in the sand. On one side, you have the true master, the Min Su. And on the other side, you have its opposite, the Dan Su, which translates to a famous master. But, as the text argues, that fame often means they're actually a false guide.
And the first and most obvious difference, according to the text, is simply their lifestyle. It's a dead giveaway. The true master is defined by a simple, ascetic life. It's a life of service, of forgetting the self to help others. The famous master, on the other hand, it's the total opposite. We're talking a life of lavish indulgence, full of luxury goods and worldly pleasures.
And as you'd expect, those completely opposite lifestyles translate directly into two completely opposite sets of teachings. The true master's path is all about discipline. It promotes things like vegetarianism out of compassion, self-control, and taking moral responsibility seriously. The false master's path is one of indulgence, with a doctrine that basically says, hey, do whatever you want, you're fine. Morality in that system is presented as optional. So this is the big question, right? With two such different paths being taught, how on earth is a seeker supposed to tell them apart? The source argues it has nothing to do with your gut feeling or how charismatic a teacher is. Instead, it offers a really practical three-step test.
Okay, here they are. Step 1. Use your own intellect. Don't just blindly trust someone because they have a fancy title or millions of followers. Step 2. Check what they're saying against established traditional scriptures. If their teachings are way out in left field, that's a reason to be skeptical. And step 3 is a huge red flag. If a teacher is actively encouraging you to indulge in things like eating meat or drinking, the source is blunt. It calls this the Ma Dao, the path of the devil, and not the path to enlightenment.
Now, to make this whole idea of a true master a little less abstract, the source points to what it considers the ultimate archetypes. These are real historical figures whose lives are held up as the perfect embodiment of this kind of selfless guidance. And the two primary examples the source gives are Buddha and Jesus. It points not just to their teachings, but to their immense and lasting influence. I mean, we're talking about a legacy of guidance that has profoundly shaped human consciousness for more than 2,000 years. It's an incredible thing to consider.
This quote from the text really gets to the heart of why they're held up as the ideal. It highlights three key things. They lived an ascetic lifestyle, they were willing to take on the suffering, the karma, of others, and in the process, they completely forgot themselves to serve a higher purpose. That right there, that is the epitome of the selfless guide.
So all of this, finding the right guide, following the right path, it all has to lead somewhere. And that's what this is all about, the final destination, the path that leads to true liberation. And this really clarifies the ultimate purpose of this whole journey. The goal isn't to get more stuff or have more worldly fun. Not at all. The real destination is purely internal. It's about achieving a deep, profound, unshakable peace, and, finally, a lasting freedom from the cycle of suffering.
And to get there, a true master doesn't just talk philosophy. They give you practical tools. The source highlights practices like mindfulness or Chainim, specifically using breath awareness as a way to calm that endless chatter in our minds. The whole idea is to cultivate a state of mental peace, because that peaceful state is the fertile ground where real wisdom can finally take root and grow.
And that brings us to our final thought, a question to take with you. Now, this explainer has focused on a spiritual definition, but these principles, this contrast between selfless service and self-serving fame, they're everywhere, right? It really makes you wonder, in any field, in any part of our lives, what does true, selfless leadership really look like to you?